entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 Valspar Championship Picks, Research, and First Look. We'll get to the field here in a minute, but I want to remind everyone to smash the like button to the episode in the comment section. Give me your early lean on a potential winner, and we'll see if they're still in the field by the date that this actually tees off. Is it going to happen on Thursday? Maybe. Maybe that happens. This all really depends on what happens at the Players' Championship. Now, obviously, I'm releasing this on a Sunday morning, and some guys are even close to finishing their second round at the Players' Championship. So I don't know who's going to actually end up in the field and who's going to end up withdrawing. If Louis Oosthuizen makes a big run at the Players' Championship, it doesn't conclude till Tuesday. You really think he's going to honor his commitment to Innisbrook outside of Tampa? Maybe. Possibly in play, but I would expect to see a rash of withdrawals coming for this tournament. But I still want to break down the field because I know a lot of people have lit their money on fire by playing the Players' Championship. Myself, not necessarily included as of yet. Still have a few runners in play. The DraftKings lineups are not looking great though, but I mean, that's no real difference from any other week now, is it? There is no Listeners League available as of right now because they will not post contests until the conclusion, I would guess, of the Players' Championship. So there may not be a Listeners League this week. So I just want to dive into the course. We need something to talk about, and you can have it on in the background while you're watching the Players' Championship. My entire walkthrough is going to be with fantasynational.com. If you go to fantasynational.com/Mayo, and you'll get yourself 20% off. You might as well do the research. Maybe this week it'll actually work. And you won't have to look at the wind towers or anything like that. But before we dive into the Valspar Championship, I do want to make a quick comment about the players. My PM/AM lean, not right whatsoever. And that's the thing when you're dealing with the weather stacks. And I've spoke plenty of times about doing the contrarian weather stack, and maybe everything will break into your favor, because trusting the weather report might not always be the case. If you put me again on Wednesday evening looking at the weather report where it didn't look like there was going to be that much rain on the Friday that basically completely wiped out the entire day, then I probably would have done the exact same thing over. And I even wrote it in the newsletter, which you can subscribe to down in the description, or if you're watching on Game Plus TV, go to Substack, type in Mayo Media, sub to it for free. Super easy, and has, info in it. Is it good info? The weather stuff was not, but I even said I'm playing 15 of my 50 lineups with this stack and hoping to take advantage. Now, clearly there was an advantage. It just didn't happen to be the PM/AM guys. It was the AM/PM guys who ended up with the advantage. So you're going to be wrong when you're trying to maximize and exploit advantages that way. And then you just live and learn. Nelson Adcock actually threw something out on Twitter on Saturday, actually, that I thought was pretty apt. If you are tilting your face off because you've lost so much money at the Players' Championship, or you couldn't afford to do this, you legit shouldn't be playing. You got to be able to laugh some of this stuff off and know that every time that you enter one of these contests, weird stuff can happen. And you might be wrong for reasons that are out of your control. You may have taken your lean too far, pressed your advantage, and it didn't end up working out. Every time that you split 8s against a 6, you're not just going to get a 3, double for 21, and the dealer busts. It just doesn't work that way. Sometimes it doesn't work out into your favor. You tried to leverage your position, and it turned out to be wrong. That's okay. But if you found yourself being legit upset about the weather draw or having your guys go out in less than ideal conditions, you need to take a step back and say, is this really for me? Because you need to be able to wipe this off, just like the rain. Just wipe it off your brow, move on to the next week. There was no reason to overinvest into the players. Maybe you wanted to play the Millionaire Maker, sure. But your odds of actually winning that were minute to begin with, so I don't really know what everyone is so upset about. And it's just like the Hideki thing. Hideki withdraws after lock on Thursday. He's looking like he might not be the lowest scoring player at this point either, with a nice 0 score in your lineups. But we talked about it on the Wednesday live show. That there was a Japanese media question about Hideki's neck, and he said that he wants to be fully prepped for the Masters. And Tambo kind of dug that one out and being like, for the Masters? I mean, they're playing the Players this week. He should be really concentrating on this. I didn't have a ton of exposure to Hideki to begin with. That was enough for me to get off of it. It doesn't mean that he was going to withdraw or play poorly, but that was a decision I made. It could have worked out the exact opposite way, and I could have ended up with no Hideki, and Hideki wins the tournament. Like, we don't know these things in advance. You're just playing off guesswork. And sometimes when you're researching stuff on the internet, then maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. And this one turned out to have a little bit more leg to it than a lot of the other stuff that we see. Shout out to the Japanese media for actually like getting real info on everything. But, you know, half the time it works out the other way with this. So yeah, you're gonna have to, again, just not concentrate too much about the outcome of what happened. You have to look back and like, hey, was my process right? Was my PM AM process right this week? No, it wasn't. It was bad process. I wanted to exploit a weather advantage, and I picked wrong based on the information that I was looking at. Maybe it was good process because obviously there was an advantage. I was just unable to identify the proper advantage. Some people out there were able to see whatever radar towers that they were using. They saw that wind coming in and thought that, you know, there's electricity in this weather, and those guys are not going to get on the course. When we knew that the wind, was going to hit on Saturday. We saw that all week. We were just trying to pinpoint the guys that would be playing in those waves and try to not play those guys. And for me, in those 15 lineups, it worked out to be the opposite way. It happens. You're going to have to move on. If this really did tilt you, like I said, even if it means you have to stop watching the show because you don't like it so much, you protect your mental health with this and don't lose more than you can afford. And this is just supposed to be entertainment. I know it's not fun when you're not winning, but at the same time, like to have it like ruin your day and you're visibly upset about it, like you need to take a big sip of calm down juice and reassess the situation. Now, let's try to dump some more money into golf at the Valspar Championship. What do you say? Let's talk about this field. And initially, the field has been released, so we can take a quick look at it here. Louis is the top player in the field for a strokes gained total perspective over the past 50 rounds. So you got Louis, Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson, Victor Hovland, defending champion Sam Burns, Matt Hughes, Shane Lowry, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, Webb Simpson playing for the second consecutive week. Was seemingly right at least round one about that one. Webb had the easiest possible conditions and fired a +3. So fading him, at least I got one thing right this week. Maybe Noren will win or Burns will win. That would just be terrific news for all of us out there who were watching the show all week. Noren's back in the field here. Mito's back. So I don't know how many of these guys are actually going to stick around and to try to put up with this, because if these guys play late into Monday evening or Tuesday morning and they're in the field at the Valspar, I wouldn't expect them to play. Now, like most of the guys are going to play, but I don't want to say, hey, you need to play Lonto Griffin. And all of a sudden, Lonto Griffin's in the final group on Sunday because he's a part of the better wave and he's playing some decent golf. He or Noren, like they just might be WDs. But I want to give you a sense of what this field is looking like because it's really good at this point. Like I said, Noren's playing. You have Neiman, who made a charge last year. Answer, Bezadenhout is back after missing the players because he was not ranked within the top 50 in the world rankings. Hadwin, Woodland, Bubba, Brooks, Kokrak, Fleetwood. I mean, if Fleetwood holds on to win, Jason Day is probably going to be a WD from this tournament. That I feel pretty confident about if he ends up making the cut at the Players' Championship. That's a lot of golf for Jason Day and that back in less than ideal conditions. But overall, like this is one of the better Valspar fields I've ever seen. So, and this is one of my favorite tournaments of the year. I love this course. I love Innisbrook. So why don't we take a look at what people have done here in the past and take a look at the tournament history. I mentioned Sam Burns. Won a year ago. I was not on that. I know a lot of people in the community were on that. -17, a 3-stroke victory over Keegan Bradley. There he is. You see Hovland was up there. I was on Neiman. Neiman ended up coming T8. Louis has played this tournament pretty well over the years. Overall, Burns won last year. Casey won back-to-back years at -8 and -10 in 2019, 2018. Probably the most profitable gambling week of my life outside of a Danny Willett Masters win, although this one may have been bigger. Adam Hadwin winning at -14 in 2017 at 100-1, and I hit Jim Herman first-round leader that year. So, and that was the first week I met Wiley ever, and he gave me, man, I can't remember the Indian dude's name at the Indian Hero Challenge or whatever that was called, the one that looked like it had windmills on the course, and we ended up hitting that. So 3 like long shot winners in 1 week. Probably never going to top that again. Charles, Spieth, Sendin, Streelman, Luke Donald. I would make some more comparisons to what this field is going to look like and the types of winners that you're going to see, but you've seen extremely high-end ball strikers like Paul Casey. Burns was able to do it last year. Historically, we know that Paul Casey's I don't want to say that. He's a poor putter. Poor with the flat stick. Sam Burns is great with the flat stick. Hadwin that year, great. Charles was great at the time. Spieth was great at the time. Streelman, not so much. Woodland, not so much back in 2012. Goosen, but a lot of these guys would pop up, like if you take the Fantasy National filter over like the past 6 years and click on hard courses, these are the type of names that you're going to see. So a lot of up and downs, a lot of grinding type players. Like, can you get it up from these green complexes and make your 9-foot putts and move on your way? Or can you strike it so immaculately that it doesn't matter? I remember having all of the monies on Jason Kokrak the year that Casey ended up winning the second time. He came in second place that year, tied with Louis. Louis been on a nice run at this tournament, so maybe he does end up playing, trying to get that first ever U.S. win, unless he gets it at the Players' Championship, obviously. You can see Louis 8th, 2nd, 16th, 7th, and his past 4 starts at this course. Kokrak has been excellent as well, but Kokrak could not get it up and down. Give the guy a Viagra or something on the 72nd hole, and he just knew it looking at it. It's like, okay, he can get it up and down, force the playoff, and it just wasn't even close. But then he ended up winning 3 times over the next 2 years, so I'm sure he's satisfied with everything. We can see the players overall who have played the best in this field in terms of strokes gained. Louis is the tops, even though Casey has won twice, but he's only played it the 3 times. He has 33 strokes gained total over 4 starts, 3 starts. So per tournament, Paul Casey has been better with 29 overall strokes gained, first and a T21 overall. Charles Schwartzel has 1 cut, 4 made. Sam Burns, a first, a 30th, and a 12th. You can see that Paul Casey came into this event without having played in any of the previous 2 years. I don't think he had ever played this tournament at all before. At least it had been a very long time. So you don't necessarily need to have a ton of course history here coming in. I would imagine the same thing. Hadwin missed the cut the year before and ended up winning the next year. Cantlay, that was the first big Cantlay sighting too. He had played Pebble Beach. It was his first real comeback into golf in 2017. This is where it became the running joke of Patrick Cantlay can't hit the ball out of the bunker whatsoever. He had his chance to put this foot down and bury Hadwin that year and just couldn't do it. But you can see a lot of good accuracy players, though. Hadwin and Herman, both very good accuracy players. We saw Streelman with the win. You're going to get your guys that hit it offline like Spieth, but, Casey's a pretty accurate driver. Burns was a year ago. At least I believe he was. At least this year, this 2007 year. Now, the field, much weaker, mind you. You have just a lot of accuracy mavens to the top. Stenson, Bryant, JT Poston, McDowell, Streelman, Kuchar, Kyle Stanley, Chez Reavie. That's the who's who of who drives the ball accurately. Last year, you saw a bit more power take over, but you did see some of your fairway finders do, we can get back on Troy Merritt. Hopefully he's shaking off his plus 18 round at Bay Hill a few weeks back. Kokrak plays these shorter courses a little bit better. Justin Thomas was in the field. So I think that we're going to get 2021 looking a little bit more like the field this year, just based off the field strength that we've seen. But you can even see the good putters, the good short game players, they do pop up. So there's many ways to tackle this course. And let's see what the stats actually tell us from this. Burns gained 9.1 strokes gained putting. Answer lost on approach and around the green, but gained 9.4. It's funny, these two would go to duke it out once again in a playoff later on, with Answer getting his first ever win at TPC Southwind later on in the year. I hadn't really considered that course. That was more of a Players' Championship and Sawgrass crossover that I was looking at, but that's somewhat interesting to think about with when you see both those guys end up popping up. I wonder who else ended up playing well at that tournament. I know Hideki was in that playoff at the same time. We can just scroll to position 1, St. Jude, because it's the only tournament that he has ever won. So what do we have in terms of average rough length, fast greens, 7,200 to 7,400 yards? That's this plays 7,300 yards, but it is a par 71. Adjusted for par, it's one of the longer ones on the PGA Tour. And this is kind of the same thing with Southwind. Southwind falls in that same dynamic, and it's only a par 70. So adjusted, you're going to see it play a bit more difficult. And you see Burns got to minus 16, had a great charge on Sunday. He won this one at minus 17. So maybe that's the angle. And hey, there's Paul Casey at the same time as well. Just taking a quick scan of the people that are in the field. It might be a nice time to get back on Dustin. Granted, he ends up playing. This is a WGC, so it's going to feature all of the top-end players in the world here. So you're going to have to kind of pick and choose with who is actually going to end up showing up. But is Robert McIntyre playing? Robert Streb is playing. Now, Bobby Mack not making the field. We might not see Bobby Mack again until the Masters, as crazy as that sounds. Scheffler, we got Webb coming in here. Cam Smith, Zalatoris, Berger. Are we getting those guys? Doesn't seem to be the case with us. Okay. Maybe you can try to parse back through the years at TPC Southwind, and maybe that will reveal something. I'm just this is the research show. This is the stuff that I look at when I start doing my research to come up with my notes for the week. And, sometimes you go down a path. Maybe it leads you nowhere, but sometimes it tells you exactly kind of what's going on, or you find a crossover that maybe you hadn't seen in the past. So we're back here at the leaderboard for that. I want to get out of Abraham Answer, go back to the Valspar. Who were the approach leaders? And it wasn't Jim Herman, tell you that much. Justin Thomas, Charlie Hoffman, Keegan Bradley, 3 immaculate ball strikers along with Paul Casey. And we saw it. The driving was very high up for them. The approach was very high up for them. Only Keegan gained strokes putting. I guess that's why he came in second place. And chipped the lights out. 4.2 strokes gained around the green. Not very typical for one Mr. Keegan Bradley. But you can see that Casey, Hoffman, and Thomas, with even an average putting week, would have finished much higher up on the leaderboard. And that's what you're really looking for at an event like this. Can your ball striking put you into a good position? Can you gain 2 to 4 strokes putting? And all of a sudden, you're going to have a good chance of winning this event. But we didn't see the direct correlation between approach, but it's up there. Keegan, second place. Louis, Victor, third and 8th place, 11th place. All these people finish inside the top 25. So if you're good with your approaches, shocker, that you're going to end up pretty well. Off the tee, some guys did better than others, but it did result into a few up there. Burns did a lot of good work, just overall tee to green. He did gain 2.3 strokes along with 3.7 on the approaches. But anytime that you gain 9 strokes putting, rough go for Abraham Answer. If he just hit his irons okay, slightly better than field average, he is the winner of the Valspar a year ago based on the putting splits that we saw. Scheffler actually put in a very nice ball striking performance. I could see Scheffler again. I mean, it's not really a hot take anymore to say that this guy is going to play well at this course, but the way that he's able to manage these difficult courses, that minus 2.6 is very atypical for Scotty Scheffler around the green. So, sometimes you may hit a few bad shots and it shows up. Other times when we're trying to figure out who's going to drive the ball well, who's going to hit their irons well, that tends to be more consistent year to year. In putting, first, 5th, 6th, and 1st were all the top 3 in strokes gained putting. TPJ was up there. Merritt did all of his damage, really, with gaining almost 7 strokes on the green. That's not the craziest thing in the world for Troy Merritt, though. We've seen a lot of really wonky splits with him on the greens over the years. It's not like he's always consistently the best putter going, but he does have some very high spike performances, as you can see. Imagine gaining 8 strokes putting at Memorial last year and coming in 50th. That is mind-boggling. But you're going to see very few players on the PGA Tour with this many putting performances over 5 strokes gained in a given week. 2 of them have come at Valspar, so maybe he's just figured out these greens. I wonder over the course of his career how well or how not well he's played this in terms of an iron type play. So last year the iron showed up, the putter showed up. That's great news. I have it sorted by, there we go. That makes things a little bit easier. I'll get rid of the Valero Texas Open, just focus on the Valspar. So every time that he doesn't gain over 6.5 strokes putting, he misses the cut. So that's worth noting. Although both those years he did hit his approaches pretty well too. Never really figured out the driver whatsoever at this course. As you can see, he was actually quite well, driving the ball quite well and playing quite well through 3 rounds at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It's just sometimes when you shoot 18 over in 1 round and you don't break 90, the stats aren't going to look so good afterwards. He had been driving the ball much more consistently, though, versus the rest of his career. You can see over his last 10 tournaments, even with that minus 1.6 and minus 1.3, it was a lot better for him gaining a stroke per event, although the iron play has been pretty mediocre, and then you have to bank on a spike putting week, but that's something that we've seen him do in the past. Tringali ended up doing very well. Let's go back to 2019. This was one of the tournaments that was canceled by the first end of I think it was the tournament after the first week. The players got canceled, then the Valspar got wiped out the next week as well when the pandemic first started. So we hadn't seen this one in a while. So let's see if there was anything different in 2019 as it pertains to how people got there. It was just a very balanced tee to green performance from Paul Casey. And it wasn't even really close. He outgained Ryan Armour by almost a stroke and a half in terms of overall tee to green, and he just broke even putting. That's all it took for Paul Casey to win a tournament and not lose like 8 strokes on the green. And all of a sudden, you're kind of doing well. And that's what we've seen at Southwind, too. That's really funny because I know with Justin Thomas, the year that he won, he lost strokes putting on the greens. Obviously, there's many ways that you can win a tournament, but if the ball striking does show up, you don't need to be putting out of your mind. You can see Ryan Armour lost a stroke and a half, ended up coming in 6th. The Glove lost 2 strokes putting, came T13. Stenson and Knox both bled over a stroke and a half to the field. Rahm, it's funny because irons weren't good that week, did putt pretty well. So the total for strokes gained, we can just go to the top of the leaderboard. Casey, Louis, Kokrak. Louis and Kokrak tying for second. Sungjae and Bubba. That was a nice week for me because I think I had the each ways on Kokrak and Im because they were my 2 outright bets that week. And they both gained a ton with the irons. And I mean, they had basically the exact same games. 3.5 equally off the tee. 4.2 with approach. Kokrak couldn't chip, but he did make a ton of putts. So that did keep him into it for a very, very long time. In overall tee to green, let's see who else pops up there. Louis was up there that week and still gained a bunch putting. His chipping was immaculate. Between chipping and putting, he gained almost 11 strokes on the field, which is kind of insane to think about. Your approach leaders from the week: Stenson, Knox, Sean Stephanie. What a throwback. Alex Chakia, Kevin Kisner that week. And that didn't really pan out all that well because those guys could not putt whatsoever. Because you need to match the putting a little bit. You can't be losing 7.2 strokes putting like our man Alex Chakia right here. But Casey was up there. Armour was up there. Kevin Tway lit it on fire and still missed the cut because he lost 4 strokes putting throughout 2 rounds. So you have the winner, 2nd place, 4th place, 6th place, 9th place, Luke Donald, Mackenzie Hughes. This might actually be a really nice Mac Hughes type place. He is in the field. We can just take a quick little scan at Mackenzie Hughes. I mean, Canadians have won. He's played well in Florida in the past. He's very inconsistent, so that's going to make things a little bit trickier. He has a miscut, a 13th, and a miscut. I mean, that kind of tracks for Mackenzie Hughes. The weeks that he doesn't putt well, it tends not to go very well for him. But you can see the high-end performances that he delivers. Again, he's a lot like Troy Merritt. Like, just look at the number of gigantic putting performances he has over the course of his career. And sometimes these difficult courses, if you're the guy who's making the 35-footers that week, that's going to go a long way. Plus, he tends to play windier courses, more difficult courses pretty well most of the time. Doesn't even guarantee him a maiden cut when you're the level of player that Mackenzie Hughes is. But you can see like his putting overcomes a lot sometimes. And it's not like he's played like poorly so far this year. Played like pretty well at Honda, like pretty even across the board. Wasn't good at the Genesis. Wasn't good at Pebble Beach, the course, but did come T16. The Farmers just was never going to be for him. But you can see that he had closed last year in pretty good form. And if you can catch one of these weeks where the driving and approach is pretty good, you just pray that the chipping and putting come along with it. And all of a sudden, Mac Hughes can be up there at the same time. Finally, let's just kind of take a look and scan to see who have been the best cut makers at this event over the years. This is actually the spot where Keegan coined the phrase, going full Keegan. He was the first round leader here, I want to say in 2018, or it was 2016, and he missed the cut because he's Keegan Bradley, and that's what he is going to do from time to time. So Kokrak has been very good here the past 3 years. Snedeker, don't want to hop back on Snedeker based on what he had been up to. It's funny, Neiman also pops up here too. What was the one? Because Mac Hughes ended up making the FedEx Cup Finals. Was it the BMW 2 years ago? 2020 BMW, the one that was at that really difficult course that Rahm ended up winning at in the playoffs. Stormed back, people hit him at 100-1. The hell was the name of that? 2020 BMW. I want to say this is the tournament. Yeah, the one at Olympia Fields. Just go take a look at this leaderboard to see if it has any resemblance to guys that I would want. Well, I mean, Rahm and Dustin have both played well at this course over time. Neiman, Kokrak was up there at the same time. Lonto, Mackenzie Hughes, Patrick Cantlay, who had as a second at the Valspar from times that we've seen him. Casey was still inside the top 20. Hatton, I think, would actually be pretty good at this course if he ended up playing. So maybe that's another one to look at. It's really difficult to say. I mean, they played this course once, so whatever recent form these guys were going in with. But you tend to think of, even though minus 17 ended up being the winning score a year ago, that this tends to play a bit more difficult than people remember. Other winning scores, from the Valspar Championship over the years, minus 17, minus 8, minus 10, minus 14, minus 7, minus 10, minus 7, minus 10. So it tends to play a bit more difficult than some of the other courses on the PGA Tour. time to talk about the course a little bit at this point. So we had mentioned it's a par 71, and it's going to play at, let's see, 7,340 yards. So that's pretty long for a par 71. It opens with the easiest hole on the course, the par 5, 560 yards, and closes through the snake pit. 15, 16, no, is it 16, 17, and 18? Or actually, is the snake pit. You can see, although the 4 closing holes are incredibly difficult. I can't remember if it was here or the Travelers that Streelman just went ham and birdied like 7 holes in a row. But you're not going to see a lot of easier holes. You'd probably want your guys starting on, let's see here, 1. If you had to take the leap of faith, just because number 9 is not necessarily a birdie hole, as they make birdie on that hole around 14% of the time. Hole 10 is only 12% of the time, but 11 and 12 are both gettable. So maybe if you could pad your stats a little bit on number 9, squeeze out a birdie there, you're just at a better chance for a streak in terms of DraftKings Showdown, but no significant advantage, as kind of pointed out by everything that was going on. You have putting and approach, but you do see off the tee and around the green play a bit more of a factor than at courses that we've seen lately. And when you look at the top 5 finishers, it's only about double the importance of approach over tee to green, over off the tee and around the green. And, in previous weeks, we've seen 2.5 times for approach, 3 times for approach. But putting is going to play a very influential factor, but an overall very good tee to green game where if your guy isn't going to hit a green on regulation, can they get it up and down? I mean, I haven't gone back and watched the Valspar tape from last year, but I assume that's what happened to Victor Hovland, that he started missing greens in regulation, and all of a sudden, he wasn't making par anymore, because that's not what he does at this tournament. You can see they're very difficult par 4s, 450 to 500 yards, but they don't comprise a ton of the course. You get a lot of ones that are in that like 444, 449, so they drop into this bucket of 400 to 450 yards. I would still rather look at the 450 to 500 because there's a lot of dog legs on this course where guys lay up to certain areas, so they end up with longer irons in. You can see that through the approach shot distribution where it just leans. Not a ton of short irons into this course, with 24% covering from 175 to 200, 23% 200 plus, so you're almost at the majority of your shots on approach coming from over 175 yards. The cut line bears that out. We have never seen a cut line under par at this tournament. It was even par last year, +2 the year before, +4 the year before that. We've seen 3 +4 since 2014. So if the wind picks up and conditions get a little bit tougher, this is not going to be a good scene for a lot of guys. The rough isn't super thick here, so you can afford to miss. It's a lot like Heritage in that sense, where if you're on the proper side of the dogleg to give yourself a better angle in, even if the ball is into the rough or the approach is a little bit longer, you're not dealing with tree trouble at all, although we do see a lower greens and regulation percentage and a high, although the scrambling percentage is higher, so that's good. At least you can get it up and down a little bit. 3 putts per round, about the same as what they are everywhere on tour. Driving distance is mitigated here. This is a Gary Woodland type jam. This is looking back at it like when he won here in 2011, and you look at the courses where he's had success. It's not that he can't have success at long courses. We just saw him do that at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. However, where did he win a U.S. Open? At a short par 70 type course where he can hit those low stingers and increase his accuracy and hit his long irons really well. We know that he putts better on Bermuda than almost anywhere else. I mean, not that he's a great Bermuda putter, but he's not a travesty like he tends to be on bent grass at the same time. So driving distance is weighed down, and we see that it doesn't really increase accuracy much, but it does allow players to take some of the elements and the water out of play, keep the ball from going deep into the forest, and get to the right side of the fairway or rough so you can have a good angle on your approach shots. So that's what we're looking at overall for the course. In the past course conditions, you can see last year, the green speed was fast, the rough length was average, hitting fairways was difficult, but scoring wasn't difficult a year ago. That's why you saw that the wind was almost nowhere to be found, calm to moderate, and that's what we've seen overall. This hasn't been a huge wind influence course, although when it does get moderate, it can play a little bit more difficult, as we've seen that hitting fairways was incredibly difficult in 2019, scoring relative to par overall was very difficult. The greens have consistently played to the fast type on the stimp. The rough length isn't like unfair, but it's not easy. It's not the Sony Open at the same time. And generally, you're finding your average to difficult type courses. So that's what we're looking at when we try to break down the course and the types of players that we want to potentially try to target here. That leads us into the modeling for this. I haven't even opened this, but I kind of have a sense after talking this through and doing the research of what I probably want to be looking for. Where's the old Valspar? New for 2021. I kind of redid everything. So strokes gained approach. Oh, I should probably mention that in the historic conditions in the breakdown, the par threes on this course, long, hard, long par threes, 195, 235, 200, 215. That's where we saw some of the crossover, at least par three wise, although all par threes are different, obviously. Some play into the wind, some don't, some are elevated, some are surrounded by bunkers, some are surrounded by water. But this was a very similar theme to the Arnold Palmer Invitational as well. These long par threes. Who can play those well? Strokes gained approach, I have at 25%. Par 3s, 200 to 225 yards, 15%. Strokes gained par 5s, 5%. Strokes gained short game, so that's putting and around the green, 10%. Good drives gained, 10%. Opportunities gained, 5%. 400 to 450. I'm going to juice that up a little bit more. I'm going to change that. I'm going to negate that, and I'm going to change that to the 450 to 500 because where you do have to lay up on some of these 400 to 450 yard par 4s, it's actually going to play more in line with what you would normally see from a 450 yard to 500 yard par 4. And those tend to be a bit more difficult. So I do want to know who plays those ones a little bit better. We'll weight that at 10% right now. I have the proximities in there. I'm going to take away the proximities for the moment. Keep fairways gained up there, opportunities gained. I think I'm just going to add overall tee to green into this as well. So we'll get overall tee to green strokes gained, and we're going to throw in, do I want to go putting? Maybe we'll chuck in bogey avoidance at the same time and see who ends up doing really well on that. Where the hell is bogey avoidance? I assume it's up here somewhere. There we go. Bogey avoidance. Birdie or better's gained. Bogey avoidance. So we'll chuck that into the thing as well. So we have 15% to play with. Within the model right now, we'll go tee to green. We'll weight that at 5% because we kind of accounted for that in some of the other ones. Now we'll put it at 10% bogey avoidance at 5%. And we will be on our way. So we've adjusted it. I should probably rename that new for 2022 at the same time. And then we can go back test this next year to see how it ended up doing. So we'll get a sense of who has played well here over the past 50 rounds. And it's not going to be super stunning when it's like DJ and Louis and all the players that you would expect. Morikawa, the very best players in the world. But we'll see if it does reveal anything else for us near the top. Best players in the field, according to this, Louis, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, Paul Casey come in the top 5 over the past 50 rounds. Morikawa, Lowry, Mito, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Chez Reavie. This could end up being a really nice Matthew Fitzpatrick course. For years, everyone always talked about how the Heritage would be his spot, but I think there's just too much birdie making. If the conditions do play a bit trickier, this could be a nice spot for Matthew Fitzpatrick. Who else is going to be up there as well? Tyrrell Hatton. I mean, I'll like Hatton here for sure. Xander, Answer, Vegas, Laird, Webb, Bezadenhout, Kokrak, Knox, and the Todd father himself, Brendan Todd. Anyone who misses the cut is going to get hurt from the Players' Championship when the overall strokes gained data comes out if we start looking shorter term. But I do want to look over the past 24 rounds at the same time. So numbers like Mito, that's no big stunner here. Laird at tougher courses, I can most definitely see that. Laird is number 1 in the model. Wow. Over the past 24 rounds, 6th tee to green over that time. Laird, Munoz, Percy, Cam Young are the top 5 in that scenario. Then you have Fitzpatrick, defending champ Sam Burns, former winner Adam Hadwin, Xander Schauffele, Bubba Watson, who's had some decent runs at this tournament over the years, which frankly blows my mind. It feels like it would need to be a tougher event for him to do really well, but let's go take the course history of old Bubba Watson, 13th, 4th in his past 2 starts. That was last year in 2019, had not played it. The only other time he had played it was 2017 and lost a ton of strokes putting. He's putted really well on these surfaces. So maybe Bubba is someone to dial up as he will probably miss the cut at the Players. I don't know how that's going to end up shaking out right now. Other guys that we're looking at now, Vic, Neiman, Putnam, Neesmith, Hatton. So I'm going to star Hatton. I like where he keeps popping up everywhere, and I do like him at more difficult courses. And I don't really care how he ends up finishing at the Players, unless he withdraws because he ends up doing so well. There's Mac Hughes. Despite the not great consistency, we have seen him pop up inside the top 20 of the short-term modeling. We see Von Taylor in there as well, Lonto, Noren, Kokrak. Although we've seen some, iffy-ish winners, breakthrough-type winners on the PGA Tour at this event in the past. We're going back to Bezadenhout once again. Hits a ton of fairways, avoids a bunch of bogeys, plays these long ones really well. I want to look at who does do the best on these 400 to 450 par 4s. Cam Young, Mito, Noren, Munoz, Hovland. Okay. Bubba, DJ, Taylor Moore, once again, Neesmith, Griot, Reevy, Putnam, Shank, Neiman, Answer, Woodland. Woodland's going to be on the card. And with all the names in this field, we still might catch a 50, 55, 60 to 1 number on him. He's not hitting a ton of fairways, but if he does club down, that could end up being a really good result for him and seeing an increase in his driving accuracy if he starts hitting those low 3-wood stingers, the fairway finders, or maybe he just gets where he needs to go to be able to hit those really well. He's better at the long, this isn't a good sample for the longer par 3s, but Todd, Noren, once again, maybe I'll go back to Noren at this course as well. Although the driving, he led everyone in approach through one round at the Players' Championship. It was like last in driving. So hopefully we can figure that out just a little bit. Burns is up there. Landry. First time we've seen Landry in a while. CT Pan, Jason Day, Von Taylor, Denny McCarthy, Varner, Kokrak, Fitz, Hatton, again, Hughes, again. Probably why they're showing up. They're also top 6 in overall short game over that time. Now, maybe you don't want to look at 24 rounds. Maybe you want to look at, past 100 rounds, if that's the way that you want to go about it. Let's look at very specific conditions to the Valspar. We see very few of par 71. So we'll say par 70 and par 71s that measure between 7,200 and 7,400 yards. That might give us a better sense of how this course is potentially going to play. Sorted by the past 24 rounds, no big shocker that you have Thomas, Morikawa, Hovland, Louis, and Casey inside the top 5. But Danny Lee starts popping up here inside the top 10. Denny McCarthy, Alex Noren once again. There's Lowry, Munoz, Burns, Webb Simpson, Dustin Johnson, Mac Hughes, 16th in this. Over the past 24 rounds, if we just look at averages, maybe that can tell us something a little bit different. Thomas, Morikawa, McNeely. I guess everyone has 24 rounds in here. Svensson, you see once again. Hopefully that dude learned how to putt. Keegan Bradley, who finished second at this tournament a year ago. Tringali, who was inside the top 10. Davis Riley and Cam Young. Maybe as Davis Riley at these tougher courses because he can kind of get it going a little bit with different parts of his game, a lot like Mackenzie Hughes in a way, where he could potentially do well here. Joel Damon I would really like for this course. We'll see how he ends up playing at Sawgrass, whether he ends up making the cut, missing the cut, who knows at this point, but those are the types of players who end up doing really well. And once again, fantasynational.com/Mayo is the easiest way to parse all of this for yourself. So let's keep those same filters on, just look at Bermuda. See if that tells us a little bit of a different story. Burns ends up becoming the best player, probably because he has a win here and came second at Southwind. That would actually track out quite well. I'm disappointed Daniel Berger's not playing. I feel like he would do really well at this tournament. Burns, Xander, Tringali, Bradley, Thomas. So 7,200 to 7,400 yards, par 70 and 71. Now with the Bermuda filter turned on, those would be your top 5. DJ, Answer, Webb, Fitzpatrick, Vegas, Noren again, Bubba again, Louis, Vic, Hadwin's now up there in the top 17. There's Joel Damon and Denny McCarthy. Once again, don't see a ton of Mac Hughes on this one. I wonder where Hughes ends up once we put that filter on. He's 41st now. Not terrible, because his odds are going to be super long. He's probably over 100 to 1 to win this tournament as long as these people stay in this tournament. Again, we don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. Kuchar has had some nice runs. So Lowry, Hatton, Mac Hughes, Damon, Hadwin, and Noren, Denny McCarthy all seem to be the super elites who continue to pop up no matter what stats that we end up looking at as we end up venturing through everything. I know that this is kind of weird to talk about without the Players' Championship being remotely close to being finished as of the time of this recording, but it's never too early to dig in and start messing around and hopefully find some sleepers. And once again, I hope everything turns out great for you at the Players' Championship. Like I said, I'm not devoid of runners right now. It's just that my very high-end plays, the Morikawas, Morikawa, Rory, and Xander is where I ended up pivoting to, both because of weather and because of ownership. I did want to eat the chalk with Morikawa, I mean, that just might blow up in my face. It's going to ruin like half my lineups if those guys don't end up making the cut or doing well. But I'm still going to have some guys who are live. All the sleepers, at least through one round, and they're not even going to get on the course until Sunday, could end up doing well. I'm really kind of having my fingers crossed for Damon or Noren really making a run here and at least finishing. Hey, one of those guys finishes inside the top 8. Good enough for me to call it a victorious week, as I'll end up in the black for the week instead of the red, which would be super nice. Not so much on DraftKings, but as we're looking at it on the betting side of things, and if one of those wins, it's one of the best weeks I've ever had. So that would be fantastic news. Remember to smash the like button, sub to Mayo Media Network, and in the comment section, leave whatever. Help out the algorithm just a little bit. Rate and review the audio pod, and use fantasynational.com/Mayo to get your discount on all of that. I'll have more information. We're probably not going to record the betting show until Tuesday at the earliest. I do have a live NCAA tournament bracket pick show coming out on Sunday night. Myself, Cust, and Raza will have that. So there'll be plenty of content on both Mayo Media Network and the Pat Mayo Experience feed. Wouldn't leave you high and dry, but hey, I know people come for golf. They want some research in golf, and I hope this helped you out just a little bit, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!